Hello, and in today's episode we're talking about living with an addict. Living with an addict is a very isolating feeling for the partner. It brings up so many different emotions and challenges. Hi, my name's Catherine, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about the emotions around what it feels like to live with an addict and how to navigate those emotions, and perhaps how to think about whether remaining with someone who has an addiction is really the right thing to do. So there are many addictions, aren't there? There are drugs, alcohol, porn, gambling, just many addictions. And unfortunately, if you're living with an addict, your life will become a roller coaster ride, because you're not just living with the person that you fell in love with, you're living with their addiction. And very often, people who live with addicts are often people pleasers. They're often the fixer. They're people who think that if I can just love them more, if I can give them the love that perhaps they never received before, I can heal them and I can make them better. You think that somehow by the care that you can give, you can heal this person and lead them out of addiction. But the hard truth is that will never happen. The only person who can lead them out of addiction is themselves. They are the only ones who can do this. It doesn't matter how hard you try. You can read hundreds of books and try this and try that. But unless they are willing, unless they have consciously made that decision that they don't want this anymore, then there's nothing you can do. It's funny, because, well, it's not funny, but there's almost a mirroring effect when you're living with someone who has an addiction, because they're constantly chasing that first initial buzz that they used to get when they first started drinking or first started taking drugs. And you're chasing that first addictive feeling of that amazing, wonderful person you first met. You're constantly hoping that you can get back to that initial stage of the relationship where it was just filled with love and excitement, and it was just the most wonderful feeling ever. So you're almost mirroring each other. And whereas they feel the withdrawals of when they don't have their alcohol or they don't have their drugs, you too are feeling that withdrawal of that loss of the person who you're hoping to find again. But the reality is that person isn't really there, because let's face it, when we meet someone for the first time, they're not going to say, "Hi, I'm an addict." Well, they're just not, are they? Because what would you do? You would walk away. And this is the thing, I think, that is something that's definitely worth thinking about if you are living with someone who has an addiction. think back, if on that first date when you had met them, they had turned round to you and said, look, I have a serious addiction, and this addiction takes control of my life, as all addictions do. What would you have done at that point? Would you have said, yeah, okay, that's okay, I really fancy you anyway, I don't mind that you've got a terrible coke habit, or you drink a litre of vodka every 2 days, I don't mind, I'll accept that. The likelihood is not. The likelihood is you would have said, I don't want that in my life, no. But that's not how it works, is it? Because either you came into the relationship with the addict and they were hiding that addiction from you, or the addiction was something that happened during the course of the relationship. But I think it's something to think about, because if you go back to that person in the initial stage, that person is saying, no, my life is worth more than coping with somebody else's addiction. And I really think that that's an important question, because when you're living with an addict, that is what you're doing. You are coping with their addiction. You are surviving. And the thing is, during the course of your relationship, you will go through all these survival mechanisms. You will turn into the person, a shadow of your former self, because now you are just learning to survive with their addiction. You're learning to navigate the mood swings. You're becoming hyper aware all the time of how they are. You can tell, maybe just from the tone of their voice, whether they're on something or they're not. And so you become like a nervous, hypervigilant, constantly looking out to see how the next half hour might be going for you. You learn that life is just walking on eggshells, and actually, even when things are okay, you don't feel okay, because you're just waiting for the next temper tantrum, doors slamming. You're waiting for all of that. So you can never actually rest. Your nervous system is just shot to pieces. Now, I read a book about someone who has gone through the experience of living with an addict. In fact, I read this book yesterday, so I thought it's very timely for me to do a video on living with an addict. So it's called My Mindful Awakening, Loving an Addict, and it's by Charlotte Swash. Now, in this book, Charlotte talks about what it felt like for her to live with an addict, and all those emotions, and how your nervous system is just in a state of high alert all the time. And the thing that I love about this book too is Charlotte, who works is a therapist and works with mindful techniques. In the book, she gives you techniques to use that you can use if to heal yourself if you have lived with an addict, to help heal your nervous system, because actually that's not an overnight fix. If you leave someone, if you've left a relationship where you've been living with an addict, it just doesn't suddenly be okay immediately. Your nervous system is so deeply rooted in either fight, flight or freeze mode that it takes time for your nervous system to come back and feel regulated again. So I will leave in the description box below the description, the book details and where you can get the book. I do recommend it, and it's not like a really long read. It's quite a short read, and it's just great because you can go back to the techniques, and it's just that wonderful thing again that when you are going through an experience like this, as Charlotte too mentions in the book, it's extremely isolating. So when you can have someone who you can relate to, it's really, really helpful. So anyway, yeah, so that's a great book. And it is such an isolating experience, because when you're living with an addict, you love them, yeah, you love them. And when they're not going through those phases of addiction, when they're not or withdrawals, they can be the most incredible person. And like I said, you can often mirror that addiction where you're just trying to chase that person who you know they can be deep inside. Again, it throws up so many different sorts of emotions. So you have the protection of that person. You find yourself they will lie to you all the time. They will lie and lie and lie and lie and lie. And that's just part of what being an addict is. They lie. And in turn, you can find yourself doing the same thing because you're trying to protect them. You're trying to protect them from family finding out, from their bosses finding out. You're trying to protect them. So then you find yourself morphing into a person that you never were or never wanted to be. I mean, it's different for everyone, but you could even have those guilt feelings where perhaps if you're living with say an alcoholic, now maybe they're like a happy alcoholic, so maybe they're happier when they're drinking, and it's when they're not drinking that's when things get really hard. And you might be encouraging them to drink because actually you just need a break from their terrible moods when they're not. So then the shame of the encouragement is also mixed in. It's funny, I remember reading years ago, it's funny how you remember things, isn't it? And it was a woman, an actress on Coronation Street, who was married to another actor on Coronation Street. And I remember reading this article, and she was writing how she actually became an alcoholic because of her alcoholic husband. His behavior was so stressful that that she then too reached for alcohol to soothe herself. And also, as often is with alcoholics, drinkers don't like to drink alone, they like company. And so he would buy her alcohol when he was getting his own, and it was made so easy for her. And it was only after she left that relationship that she realized that she too had gone into the world of alcoholism, but purely because of his own addiction. It's very hard when you're considering leaving a person who is addicted. But the thing is, quite often, that may be the only thing that you can do that might help them. Because, as I mentioned before, you can love them and do as many things for them as you think as possible, but that's not going to change their addiction. They have to change their addiction. And for some people, they have to hit rock bottom before they can consciously make that choice. And we have to understand, as people pleasers and fixers, that somebody else, you are not responsible for the choices that somebody else makes. You may think you are. They may tell you are. Oh, you make me drink because of your constant nagging, or you're this or you're that. You drive me to drink. But that's just a lie, yeah? Because actually, they are responsible for their addiction. And you are not responsible for their addiction. So you have to think, is this something I want to live another 5, 10, 15 years with? And as much as they may promise you that things will change, honestly, it can take many, many attempts for an addict to eventually become clean. And actually, that person you're chasing, who you saw in the very beginning, that person isn't there. Their addiction is there. And think back to who you were before that relationship, and whether you would have said, yeah, I'll happily live with an alcoholic, I'll happily live with a cocaine addict. Think back to the choice you would have made prior to that relationship. Because actually, you need to show yourself compassion. You need to show yourself love. Yeah, because there's nothing you can do for someone who is addicted. Yeah, you can be there. Yeah, you can be their friend. But you can't change them. Okay, well, I think that is all for today. Please do let me know in the comments. Do let me know, maybe this is something that you have experienced. Maybe you have had experience of a relationship, of living with an addict, and you too know how hard it is. Maybe you have some things that you might like to add that might help other people out there watching this video who are currently going through living with someone's addiction. Okay, please do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Please do comment. I always love to hear from you. And finding that peace within so we can send all that love out. Have a wonderful day. Bye.